This ordinary maid was cleaning the bathroom, but a man walks right into pee. Their awkward meeting leads to a different future. Marisa works as a maid in a 5-star hotel in Manhattan. Because her ex-husband didn't want to raise their son, so she's both a mother and a father. This day she was cleaning as usual, but then Marshall walks into the bathroom, pulls down his pants and gets ready to pee. Marisa saw this and left in a panic to go to school. Her son's speech had already started. Ty wasn't sad to see Marisa arrive late. He was just sad that his father said he would come, but didn't keep his promise. Marisa reassured him that next time would be better. Then she took him to the hotel. She had work to finish. Caroline sees Marisa and asks her to help her return the new dress. However, her colleague was envious of the silky, expensive dress. The dress was just the same size as Marisa's and she was asked to try it on. Marisa was forced by her colleague to put on the expensive dress. Ty was bored and wanted to go find Marisa, so he got on the elevator by himself, but there was Marshall on the elevator. Actually, Marshall is a candidate for president. Now he's a congressman and he's very interested in politics. He's always in the headlines. Ty knew who Marshall was. Marshall was very gracious, so they exchanged friendly greetings. He found Ty to have a unique perspective on politics. He was so talented at such a young age. Marshall was eager to talk to him, but Ty knew he needed Marisa's permission to hang out with strangers. So Ty took Marshall to see Marisa. By now, Marisa was dressed in a fancy dress. She had a very sexy body. Marshall sees her and thinks she's a socialite, so he fell in love with her right away. He invited her out to walk her dog. Marisa was urged by her colleagues to put on her coat and go out with Marshall. But as soon as they left the house, they were photographed by a frenzy of reporters. Marshall evacuated the reporters and caught up with Marisa. Ty had the good sense to take the dog and go play, leaving the two alone. Although it was their first time meeting each other, there was no awkwardness. They even had a good understanding of each other. Marisa had the insight to read a book. This was a surprise to Marshall, but a paparazzo caught them interacting. Marisa scrambled to her feet and hid. Because she can't be caught wearing someone else's clothes. The magazine was still stuck to Marisa when she stood up. Marshall took it off for her, and he looked at that butt and said it was okay. The three of them go to the oceanarium. Marshall and Marisa talk politics. Marisa speaks her mind. Marshall thinks she's a smart, beautiful woman. Marshall asks Marisa to meet him next time when they leave. Marisa doesn't agree, although she had a crush on Marshall. But how can a maid and a congressman be together? But Marshall does something daring to woo her. Beautiful woman in a fancy dress. The congressman saw her and fell in love with her. But this woman was just a hotel cleaner. They had even met in the bathroom. At the time, Marshall didn't even notice her. Marisa parted from him and went back to work. A colleague told her to be brave and pursue love. Marisa thinks Marshall thinks she's a socialite and treats her that way. If he knew she was a maid, he wouldn't have gone out with her. But Marshall doesn't know Marisa's true identity at this point. He hurriedly wrote an invitation and had his men deliver it to the woman in the presidential suite. They put it on the table, and Marisa was called into the office. She thought she had been caught wearing Caroline's clothes, but the previous manager had left, and Marisa had years of experience, and the clients loved her, so they decided to make Marisa the new manager. Marisa is overwhelmed by the sudden news. Marisa wanted to take advantage of this opportunity. Mother and son were happy with the day's events, but the next day, Marisa was in the headlines. She and Marshall were photographed by paparazzi and made the headlines, even though she only showed a side view of her face. But Marisa was scared too. Caroline received an invitation from Marshall to have lunch with her. Marisa knew Marshall was inviting her, not Caroline, but she couldn't go to the appointment or tell the truth. And Marisa has a new job assignment. She has to serve in Marshall's room, and it scared her. She had to cover her face with something. That's when Caroline comes in. Marshall is horrified to see a strange woman, and Caroline is very enthusiastic. Marshall was devastated. He said he was looking for someone other than Caroline. The manager knew from Marshall's description of the person. He liked that he was looking for Marisa. There's nothing he can do about it. But the two of them had a wonderful connection. While on the road, Marshall saw Marisa and Ty. He urgently approached them. Marisa says she moved away. Now she doesn't have the courage to say she's a maid. She also refused to give Marshall her contact information. His assistant gave her Marshall's contact information. Marisa heard he was going to speak about housing projects in the slums. She said that if Marshall was truly committed, he would be supported because she grew up in a dilapidated house there. So Marshall liked her even more. Marshall decided to invite her to the party. The assistant gave Marisa the invitation letter, but the manager wanted her to break up with Marshall. It's for the best. Marisa is confused. She does like Marshall and she understands that. But her coworkers say Cinderella can meet Prince Charming. Maybe Marisa will be the one. The coworkers help Marisa get all dolled up. Hey Maid, hey Congressman, what made them fall in love? Can this Cinderella and Prince Charming get together? The maid's son can also help his mother find true love. Marisa decides to confess her identity to Marshall and breaks off contact with him. Her co-workers help Marisa dress up in a glittering outfit. Everyone in the room is stunned when they see the glittering Marisa. Marshall saw her figure and said she was beautiful, but Caroline felt something familiar about Marisa. Marisa fled in a panic. Marshall didn't want to miss the one he loved, so he chased after her. Marisa is deeply in love with Marshall, but the difference in their identities was too great. Marisa couldn't be brave enough to say she was a maid. Marshall kissed and gagged her directly. They had a wonderfully hot night together, but the next day Marisa came back to reality. She fled on her tiptoes. It was time to wake up from her dream. As she was leaving, Erilyn remembered that the woman from last night was Marisa. She wondered how Marisa had hooked up with Marshall, so she went to check the security cameras. She found out that Marisa had stolen her clothes. The hotel called Marisa to the room, and Caroline called Marshall over to reveal Marisa's face. Marisa couldn't explain it all to him, so she was fired straight away. The manager encouraged Marisa that setbacks don't bring people down. You have to learn how to get back on your feet. Marisa was touched. On her way back, Marshall came out after her and asked her what all this was about. Marisa says she's just a maid. Marshall couldn't believe it. Marisa knew she had done wrong, but if she was just a maid, Marshall wouldn't have even looked at her. The first time they saw each other was in the bathroom. Marshall didn't even look at her, even though she was the one who cheated in the first place. Marisa still felt guilty. Marshall kept asking her to tell the truth. They both knew they loved each other, but status got in the way of love. People often said that Marisa's desire to be the congressman's wife was just a pie in the sky. Even her mother urged her to let go of the relationship. She was chased by a bunch of reporters when she left the house, and Marshall thought about her a lot. Marshall clarified that he and Marisa were very good friends. Marisa knew it was the right thing to say, but she was still hurt. As the days went by, Marisa found a new job, and Marshall's new speaking gig is at Marisa's work hotel. Ty found out and decided to help them out. He asked Marshall in public if he could forgive Marisa for her previous mistakes. Marshall said he would. Then Ty gave Marisa's location. Marshall left the lectern and ran all the way to Marisa. Marshall asked her, "Can we get to know each other again?" Marisa knew she loved this man to death. Then they kissed, and it was live on TV. The future was going to be great for both of them.